this is really a watershed moment in terms of designations of cryptocurrency businesses by OFAC. Look, there's been a focus for some time on on-chain mixing services, right? Sort of anonymization that's being used by licit and illicit actors alike. We saw in May sanctions against Blender.io on very similar facts, right, for laundering funds associated with North Korea's Lazarus Group. But what makes Tornado Cash different is really just the size and scale. I mean, what TRM, as you mentioned, analysis shows is that Tornado Cash has been involved in really every significant hack involving North Korea, and and they have used Tornado Cash to launder almost $1 billion in funds. And, obviously hacks are terrible. Hacks are terrible for the crypto ecosystem. They're terrible for those who lose money. But when they are used by a nation state actor like North Korea to launder funds for weapons proliferation and destabilizing activity, it becomes a national security concern. And that's really what this sanctions designation is about today.
All right. So according to data from Nansen, another blockchain analytics firm, Ether deposits on Tornado Cash spiked after the Ronin hack earlier this year. Is that connected to potential market manipulation by North Korea?
Really look, if you go back for a year or more now, North Korea has really, Tornado Cash has been the go-to mixing service, sort of money laundering concern for North Korea's cybercriminals. And the Ronin hack is sort of the biggest example of that, right? They stole $600+ million off the Ronin Bridge and then needed to figure out how to launder those funds and very quickly moved them into Tornado Cash. But what's really so unique sort of about this moment is that, regulators also have tools now and training to sort of track and trace the flow of funds. So, I spent a number of years at the US Treasury Department, and it could take months or longer to bring sanctions actions. But basically what we saw in the Ronin hack is we saw the funds go to a wallet address. That wallet address was sanctioned by OFAC. We then saw those funds move again. Those addresses were sanctioned. We saw them move through two mixing services, Blender.io, which was sanctioned. And today, we see OFAC sort of going after the largest mixing service or the go-to mixer for North Korea in these cases. And it's really, again, sort of OFAC, I think in many respects, sending a message, right? Look, it's not just going to be small mixers. It's not going to just be mixers associated with the darknet. Like DOJ and Treasury has brought actions against before, like Helix and Bitcoin Fog. We are going to go, Treasury is going to go after large mixing services that do legitimate business, like Tornado Cash, but does not have the controls in place to stop illicit actors like North Korea from taking advantage of their protocols.
So Treasury officials have also said that since its creation back in 2019, has reportedly laundered more than $7 billion worth of virtual currency. I wonder how much of that is to cover illicit activity.
So look, I mean, I think when they're talking about laundering funds, that $7 billion is the number that Treasury at least is putting on sort of what has been, what illicit actors have used Tornado Cash to launder, which is a significant amount of funds. I mean, when you're looking at a nation state actor like North Korea, and while this isn't a North Korea specific designation, specific sanctions, the reality is that, Tornado Cash is being sanctioned for its involvement with North Korea in terms of laundering funds or North Korea's use of Tornado Cash to launder funds. But the reality is that, North Korea is a country with almost no GDP. And these crypto attacks on Ronin, on sort of other, DeFi or, cryptocurrency exchanges, becomes a huge way for them to fund weapons proliferation and other destabilizing activities. So the $7 billion number is certainly not all North Korea. It's not all Lazarus Group. But I will tell you, when you sort of become or develop a reputation as the go-to obfuscation technique, the go-to mixing service for North Korea's cybercriminals, I think you put yourselves in the crosshairs of OFAC, and that's really what we saw today. One thing that's sort of really important to mention a little bit in this context is, look, if you're a cryptocurrency exchange, yeah, I'm sorry, go on.
But banning U.S. persons isn't necessarily going to stop North Koreans from using it for illicit activity. And we also heard from co-founder Roman Semenov saying that, it would be technically impossible for sanctions to be applied to protocols like Tornado. So I wonder your thoughts about that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and obviously it's top of mind for everybody today. This is a very different designation than what we've seen in the past, where the U.S. really has sort of the reach that it does in some instances. It does not here. But the reality is, I guess, a couple things. One, look, sanctions are not only intended to cut off sort of U.S. persons or interests. It is very clear that, mechanically, U.S. persons, U.S. businesses, U.S. entities are no longer, or I should say they're prohibited from transacting with Tornado Cash today. However, the reality is there is a name and shame component to this too, right? Where, illicit actors, right, don't want to deal with an OFAC sanctioned entity like Tornado Cash. And we've seen this play out. Look, a year ago, a little less than a year ago, Treasury sanctioned non-compliant cryptocurrency exchanges, Suex and Chadex and Garantex, all Russia-based entities. And we saw their volume drop precipitously, really in the first couple of weeks after the designation because they were designated. This isn't only because there were U.S. persons who now were prohibited, but because the world, writ large, licit and illicit actors did not want to continue dealing with them. Criminals didn't want to continue dealing with them because they felt like there was a light that was shining there. And I think that light could very well be shining at Tornado Cash today. One just sort of point to put on this too is, look, the overwhelming majority of cryptocurrency businesses are compliant, large VASPs, are compliant exchanges. That have compliance controls in place. They're using transaction monitoring solutions like TRM. They're doing geolocation to ensure that they're not transacting with North Korea or Iran or a sanctioned jurisdiction, right? They're filing reports with the Treasury Department. So, I would say that sort of most, like the large cryptocurrency exchanges that we all know, were in compliance yesterday, and they remain in compliance today because they're following OFAC's best practices. And if there's anything I could sort of recommend to folks, it's definitely OFAC put out some great guidance in October that really walks through sort of what are the tools and what are the best practices to have. And it's something really always important to do, including sort of a full risk assessment of your sanctions exposure. But the reality is, the compliant exchanges, which make up the vast majority of the crypto economy, are doing the right thing, and they were doing, and they're still doing the right thing today.